Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Virtual Networking Talk. Today we're going to talk to our guest host, Lauren Mackinnon, on how to ace in a virtual networking environment. Lauren is currently the COO at Glotman Simpson Consulting Engineers. She was recently promoted to this role from Director of HR and Operations. Lauren has quite a few years of experience as an HR professional and in operations. She holds a CPHR designation as well. Lauren volunteers in her community as she has held positions as in President of CSMPS and Director of BC Provincial Council. And she has also chaired the CPHR Roundtable. With that, I would like to thank and welcome Lauren to this talk and congratulate her on the recent promotion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for coming today.
So we're going to talk about virtual networking. So first up, what does virtual networking mean to you as in general, Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, one of the main things when I got the sort of invite to this this webinar was, what does virtual networking mean? To me, it really means the same as it would in person. I believe that the same principles really do apply of how you present yourself and the different kind of etiquette or netiquette that is required virtually is the same as it would be really in person. So to me, virtual networking, yes, it's changed the way we network and we socialize with business contacts. But I think embracing that and understanding that we're all in the same boat. We don't have, social functions that we're going to anymore that provide a platform for that. Sometimes we have to kind of seek them out in different ways and get creative. But I do think that, virtual networking is something that's going to be around for a long time, and getting some skills and some comfort level with it right now is really important.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I believe all of our attendees agree, and with their heads nodding. And so my next question is basically, how has your experience been as a CEO who has an HR background, and is there anything from your experience as HR that has helped you in this current role?
Yeah, so I started my career as an HR assistant, actually, at an environmental engineering firm, working under an HR manager that was extremely influential in my early career. I kind of learned under her while I studied and got my CPHR designation, moving into more of an HR generalist type of role. I really tied myself to the business, I think, early on in my career, in understanding the way that the company worked and really having a sense of how the strategy plays out and aligning HR practices to that company strategy. That was something I learned right away that was really important for me to excel as a leader in HR. And from there, I started my own HR consultancy business, working with small to medium-sized businesses build their HR programs from basically the ground up. So companies that didn't have an HR manager, didn't really have any HR in place, I would come in and help them set up kind of the foundational, programs and practices, and then be there as a kind of a leader on the side when they needed me. And actually, Glotman Simpson, my current employer, was one of my clients, and I fell in love with the culture here. The leadership team is such a great company, and when they approached me to come on full time as the director of HR and operations, I said yes, closed down my consultancy, joined them, and with my kind of business background and really my curiosity into the business world was really what propelled me to take on more of the business versus HR, and understanding that both of those components come together so closely. You talk to, CEOs and presidents of companies, and one of their main concerns, the major assets that they have in their company, are their people. So that's tied so closely to HR, the way we manage and maintain our culture, the way we have a direct line into the employee experience. All these things are huge for companies. And then, taking it a step further, getting involved in kind of the finance side, the marketing, the way our brand is represented in the world in terms of reputation. Not only is that for business, it's also for recruiting. All of those things kind of intertwine. And I think that's why I've been successful, because I've always really understood the importance of that, and really I'm curious about learning more in that tie together between business and HR.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And my next question is more focused towards the current situation relating to COVID-19. So how has COVID impacted the role of HR going forward from day-to-day operations to the company strategy?
Yeah, so huge impacts for sure, especially at the start. We really had to learn things overnight. For example, with our company, we followed the news relatively closely for a while there in March, and basically, made a decision in the morning that, okay, we need to send everybody home to be at home, and that's what our operation is going to look like now. So we had to think very quickly of how that would affect people. You're not only now thinking of employees' experience in the office, it's how are they going to be productive and their best selves at home. So it was, setting up the appropriate IT equipment, so computers, hardware, that stuff, making sure our software was, good enough and up to speed, even down to making sure employees' internet connections were, good enough to kind of use the programs that they use day to day. So it was, the day-to-day operations changed to the level of being very reactive because we had to be. But when we took a step back, it was, how can we now be more focused strategically long-term as this, carries on for however long? How do we plan for it? So from an HR perspective, I'd say day-to-day operations were stressed to the max at the beginning and slowly have kind of evened out. And now we're thinking more responsively to, how the teams have come back to the office, if the teams now have to go back home, what that's going to look like. And we've been in preparation mode for all of that. So definitely as HR professionals and everybody that I've talked to in the field, this has been one of the most influential and major learning experiences of their careers so far, because it's just been so incredibly challenging and changing day to day.
As you talked about, you started your career as an HR assistant, right? So if you were graduating today, and if you had that job today, since we have a lot of graduating students, so I asked this, what would you tell your younger self starting as an HR professional?
Yes. I would probably personally, I would tell my younger self that, to have more confidence in myself. I think we learn a lot of theory in school and in our studies. It's all very theoretical, and you kind of get out into this workforce and you're like, okay, I'm at a company and there's all these different company politics and every company is different. And you get kind of scared and shell shocked, or, decisions or employee issues are coming at you and you're kind of like, well, I don't even know. I don't have the confidence to really give an answer. We have that inside. I mean, we learned it. If you've taken the CPHR exams, you've been through a scrutinizing, exam process to, put yourself in situations and be able to get out of them appropriately. But I think I would say understanding you've got what you need. Like don't stifle yourself. Keep pushing. If you don't know something, don't say, well, I can't do it. Go and find out. Like, talk to people, network with people, get some good HR allies in your back pocket as mentors and sponsors, and go to them and ask. So I have had the luxury of having a lot of really great HR professionals in my little circle that I constantly am following up with. I'm constantly chatting with them. I really make a strong effort to have a strong circle of people that are even in different business practices. So there may be, somebody in HR that specializes in legal. There may be somebody that's, a recruiting specialist. Like, I try to make sure I have a really good, strong network of people I can go to. So I would say, yeah, trust in yourself, have the confidence. Don't say, you don't know enough. push, find out, do research, learn and grow constantly, because I don't think, honestly, you're ever going to know everything. So, I think life, and especially professional life, is a constant learning practice.
Yeah, that was actually great to hear that, that being curious can lead to basically better career at the end of it. So I'm going to shift the focus towards virtual networking. My first question is, what should we expect to achieve when we go to a virtual networking event?
Mm-hmm. I would say, when I think about this for myself, what I expect to achieve when I'm attending something like that, virtually, um, you know, to be easy on myself, that it's not going to necessarily be a home run. I think you put a lot of anticipation and expectations out there that, okay, I'm going to like go on this virtual networking social, and I'm going to meet all these people, and I'm going to get all these contacts, and it's going to be great. Sometimes you go to things and you maybe make one connection or two, and you know what? That's fine. You build on that as you go, and gain, more connections as you grow. I think another thing is, I really value the importance of doing your research before you go to these events. So in person, like pre-COVID, during COVID, if I'm attending any kind of event, I want to know kind of who's attending. So who are the types of people I want to be reaching out to in this event? Who do I want to specifically talk to, and do a little bit of background research on them. So I don't just kind of show up and go, oh, hi, I'm Lauren. I just want to talk. So you kind of have a little bit of something in your back pocket about them. Like maybe they've had a recent career change. Maybe they've done a really cool project that you want to ask some questions about. That's kind of one of the main things, focusing on making the more solid, genuine connections that are good and going to serve you, versus just making a whole bunch of surface level acquaintance type connections, I think would be a big one.
Yeah, you recently, in one of our previous questions, you said that we should prepare similarly to an in-person event for a virtual networking event. And building on that, for the research part, my next question is basically, is there anything different we should do when preparing for a virtual networking event? Like, what can one do to prepare for it?
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of, if you are entering a space where you're going to be on video, I would say really make sure you are prepared. So as you would go to, say, industry social event to network, you would put on, a nice shirt or a tie or whatever, your audience will be dressed as. Try to fit that, kind of mirror that, making sure just technically your backgrounds are okay. You've got Zoom or whatever platform figured out in advance. Certain things like etiquette, like muting your mic, raising your hand to talk. Those are huge things. Like, I see a lot of people who, you're always on the camera. So it's exhausting, really, because when you're in a group of people, not everybody's necessarily looking at you all the time, but in this mode, you can see everybody. So just to know that you're being viewed all the time in your screen. So make your screen as inviting and as friendly as possible, and look engaged. Some people, you can tell that they're doing email on the side, or they're, in the chat function in Zoom and talking to friends. That is definitely not something that really is, like, perception wise, isn't great for that. And then I guess expanding on that a little bit further would be doing your research. So as I'd mentioned, like, following up and looking up people that are attending, getting some, if it's a lot of these networking sessions that I'm joining, is there's usually a speaker at the beginning for maybe 15 minutes on a topic, and then they have it an open networking kind of thing. Get some, ideas on questions, and start asking questions when the speaker is there, or, take notes of sort of some key takeaways that you learned from the speaker. And that gives you kind of ammo for when you're now in this networking session, that you can kind of be posing questions to other people, or sharing key takeaways, or, somebody asked a question, note their name and say, you know what, that was a great question that you asked the speaker. Like, tell me a little bit more about it, or let's talk about it. That kind of sharing and being prepared in that way, I think is really important.
So building on that, basically that wearing a tie and wearing a better shirt and stuff like that, not a polo like me. So my question is, what kind of no, I'm just joking. What kind of netiquette should we follow for virtual networking events? Basically building on that, being mute and asking questions and stuff like that. Basically, what kind of netiquettes should we follow overall?
Yeah, I would say, it's difficult because you sometimes are in this room like we're in now, and if you've got a question and you pipe up while someone's speaking, it's really hard to kind of, did my question come through? Did somebody hear me? So sometimes some of these platforms have a raise hand function, and the host will be able to go and say, okay, we have somebody waiting to speak. I would use that. I'd also, send a note to the host or to the group with something, because your name will be tagged to that chat function question or comment. And whoever's kind of facilitating the session can then point to you, and then you have your turn to speak. So I'd say, like waiting for your turn politely to speak. Definitely, muting when you're not speaking is another one. Obviously, as I mentioned, the background, your physical presence is key too. And I think just being a friendly and approachable face on the screen is a big thing too. If you're not interested, or you're not in it, that's what we'll portray, right?
Yeah, so another question basically based on that, like what skills should one focus on to excel at virtual networking events? Because you talked about doing your research that basically we can focus on, but is there any skill that we should be focusing on? Is it your speech or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the main things specifically, I think, would be actually like a few things. It's really, when I thought about this, it was research, presentation, and follow up. So research before even the event is taking place. Like I said, go and do your research. Get some knowledge of the speaker, of the people, of whatever that is. Professionalism, presentation in during. So some of those tips I said about like mic muting, raising your hand, asking questions, comments, being more thoughtful in your interactions. And then third, follow up. So that's, I think, one of the main pieces that people miss, I think, even in-person networking, is not actually going and following up with those connections that you've made. So you have had a great little chat with somebody in that networking session, but that's maybe the last time you'll see them unless you follow up or they follow up. You might see them maybe in a couple months at another function, and you're kind of back to square one of getting to know that person. So what I've always done is, if I've really made a connection with someone, I'll typically go into LinkedIn and connect with them on LinkedIn if I'm not already a connection, and send them a personalized note in that. So, and relatively soon after you've had your first connection. So going in and saying, John, it was really great to meet you at that, industry social the other day on Zoom. Had an awesome chat about the topic. Are you attending any other webinars or socials coming up? Would love to know, and would love to keep in touch with you. Here's a link to some more information I found on the topic that we were discussing at that event, and just kind of share back and forth. That opens that door for creating more genuine connections. And yeah, that follow-up is key, and continue to if you've got connections that you're making, continue to nurture those all the time. So one of the things I do is I actually have a spreadsheet, which is kind of funny. It's old school, but I have a spreadsheet that for my important business contacts, I list their name, their company, their title, but I also have a little notes section that I add things like their kids' names, where they like to go on vacation, their hobbies and interests, like little things that we've talked about together that I want to remember. So if I know I'm going to an event where that person's going to be, I brush up on my notes so that, I'm not kind of standing there going, "Oh, hi, Alicia. Nice to see you again." And, say something like it's just nice to know. It shows care when you know a little bit about that person that you've met maybe one or two times.
Thank you for that. And I know Pomponia has got a few questions for you. I'm basically done with my questions. If anybody else has a question, please raise your hand. As Lauren pointed out, use the Zoom function. And Pomponia, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions.
Lauren,
Yeah,
Lauren, you mentioned LinkedIn. Do you want to just comment about LinkedIn sort of as a tool, in the HR function?
So using LinkedIn as a tool?
Using LinkedIn as that tool. Can you just tell us the importance of what you should do in order to use LinkedIn effectively as in sort of especially in HR capacity?
Yeah. To me, LinkedIn at the very beginning was more just about recruiting. Everybody's resume is online and you can see all of that information. So that's what I was really using it for until I realized the power of the connection that you're making on LinkedIn. So if you think about it this way, if you make a connection with somebody today that works at, I don't know, BC Hydro, and, they're in marketing or something, down the line, maybe 5 years from now, if you've nurtured that connection and made a great, connection with that person and your friends on LinkedIn, you're applying for a job at BC Hydro or wherever other company that is, their connections may be connected to somebody there. So it's always like, 5 or 6 degrees of separation, whatever they call it. That's kind of how it works with LinkedIn. So you can get it in and say, hey, connection. I see that you are connected to the, HR manager over here. I'd love to speak to them. I'd love to get to know them or whatever that may be. It's a really good tool for that. And then just as I mentioned about, these networking sessions, most people's profiles are public and you can go in and take a look at some of the people's backgrounds. Maybe you went to the same school as them. Maybe you volunteer at the same association as certain people. You can see a lot of the different similarities or just get to know what other people are doing. So for example, a couple of my connections have taken this coaching certification. I can search in my search bar that specific certification and see which of my connections have that. And I can reach out to them and ask, how was that program? How did you find it? I'm interested in maybe taking, do you want to have like a 5-minute chat about it that way? So it's the professional Facebook, and I have it open all the time at my desk, just because I'm in and out of it all the time.
Okay, so if somebody else has a question before we sum it all up, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. I'm gonna give another 10 seconds, and other than that, I'll just thank Lauren.
Can I ask one more question? So in terms of the job market, so Lauren, you mentioned that you had worked in your own business, with HR clients. Can you give our students sort of any advice in terms of starting their careers in HR? This is always a really big challenge. You don't, a company wants some experience, you don't have that experience yet, you need that opportunity. Are there any sort of industries or companies that are especially good at giving opportunities to new graduates?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of companies that already have an HR presence are good places to start. Somewhere where you can maybe have a mentor as you're starting out. Like I said, with my first position, that HR manager was huge in propelling my career, and I learned so much from her. That was a big thing for me. So I think if I would have joined somewhere you know, that didn't have that, it would have been a little bit more difficult. And like you said, it is hard to get your foot in the door when you don't have that experience. So I would say, yes, one, looking for companies that have an HR team, people there that you want to learn from. And then two is seek out any kind of like internships or practicums or summer positions that are just people looking for contracts. You know, mat leave coverages or things like that come up here and there. A short stint in HR is still experience. So, you know, try to think outside the box and do those if you can.
Thank you.
HR has never been more important right now, you guys. So, and that's going to be the case for a long time. So this is a really, really lucrative time to be in this profession. And I'm so excited that you guys have chosen that. And I think it's, the things that are going to come out of, you know, not even just COVID, but I think just going forward, the HR landscape is looking to be a really awesome career choice.
Thank you, Lauren, for your time. And I, for sure, personally, I've taken quite a few pointers from this, and I'll make sure I keep following up on those. Thank you once again, and that's all. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you guys very much. It was great to meet you guys. Bye.